India's demographic dividend. Is it really a dividend, or is it a debt, or even a deficit? What is the need of the hour for employees to continuously reskill and upskill themselves so that they can be gainfully employed? And how can technology play an important role in this? Hello and welcome to a special show. Indus presents Skilling India the Right Way, partnered by ET Now, where I'm joined by a panel of experts and we will try and get you the answers to these very questions. But first, allow me to introduce my panel to you. First up, we have Gaurang Torwekar. He's the co-founder and CEO at Indus. M. Lakshmanan. He's the CHRO at L&T Technology Services. Sanam Rawal, the lead talent advisor at Bloom Ventures. Ninad Karpe, partner at 100x.vc. Eddie Travia, investor Indus and CEO Coincilium. Gentlemen, Sanam, thank you so much for being on this panel. Gaurang, let's start with you. I spoke about the demographic dividend. How are you seeing the youth of India? Are they trained well enough? What's the X factor that we are missing? Because we are missing something here.
No, definitely. I agree with you. I think one of the things that's quite close to my heart and I feel really strongly about is that a lot of engineers who are passing out in India. Right? Every year we have thousands of engineers passing out, but more than half of them are unemployable.
Right.
Although that number is rising, the employability numbers are rising, it's still quite low, right, as compared to the global scale, global phenomena. And not just that, right, so when the engineers join the big companies like L&T or Infosys or any of these companies, they have to spend 4 to 6 months just to get trained on the job, which I feel is a travesty, and I think that's where we can improve India and the education system.
Mr. Lakshmanan, I want to get you in on this point, exact point that Gaurang has raised. At an IT company, a leading IT company like yours, how are you handling the HR needs of the company to see that the employees, how are they coming in? How do you need to retrain them, reskill them?
Yeah, I think the silver lining really is that the number of employable people are only increasing over the period of time, right? We can keep looking and say that India is not good or not good enough, but I think it's getting better, right? That's the best part about it and the silver lining. Number two, I think as large IT companies, I think we are also trying to digitize a lot of training and learning that we do. We're trying to ensure that the learning time cycles are reduced, right? Gone are the days when we did training for a year or 6 months. Today we do that in 6 weeks. But still, I think there is an opportunity to do things better. And I think we are continuously trying to do things better by embracing digital platforms, digital learning models, digital evaluation models.
Definitely technology and digitization is playing a key role in the hiring process as well. Sanam, I want to get in your viewpoints on this. How are the needs for an organization, the employee needs, how have they changed?
Right, I think it has largely become a candidate-driven market. You know, what we are being able to see is that candidates today are getting a real chance of understanding the kind of things that companies are being able to provide today. You know, there are large autonomy-driven roles where they feel that being a part of smaller startups is something that is, you know, giving them more of a direct impact growth as compared to, you know, larger ones. I think they're trying to see the kind of ESOPs-driven interests that are being built today, which, you know, wasn't really the case before. So I think candidates are really understanding, employees are really understanding, you know, where the kind of structure-driven growth is, and I think that is where, you know, they are, you know, picking the right places to be employed. You know, nowadays when jobs are so many and candidates are now, you know, trying to see which one is the best one for them. And it's not necessary that it's just about the CTC or about the location or what the company is giving. I think it's more to do with where the company is going to, you know, connect to your passion and to your growth in the next, you know, maybe 3 years.
Ninad, want to get you on this. This is what you're doing at 100x VC, is your kind of mentoring, nurturing startup. So just from your point, how have things changed over the years, and what is the importance of the startup culture, because there is a lot of attrition?
So the best thing about startups is a lot of this, you know, most of the engineers who pass out all want to become startup entrepreneurs. So they all raise their hands. So that's good news. I think the way it is changing, and Lakshman mentioned, you know, things are improving. Today, and I think it's the responsibility of people providing those skilling services. Kids want bite-sized training modules, bite-sized skill modules in a form in which they can digest or ingest very fast. And that's the whole challenge before the skilling. The kids are smart. They're really smart, all of them. None of them I've met is not able to absorb. What is the gap? You know,
Yes,
so
that's important.
you keep mentioning 25, 50% are not employable, whatever. Whatever the percentage, I think the gap can be filled if we have the right skilling models which are contemporary, not just the knowledge, but the form is important. In today's world, in the world of low, kind of retention or low attention span, I firmly believe nano skills are required, given in a gamified or in a format which they enjoy.
So Eddie, just adding on to that, because the idea is you need to provide this reskilling, upskilling, which is quicker, easy to access, and in a way continuous. So it's something that it's not that something I do once in my life and forget about it. I have to keep doing it every few months, every few years. Just your thoughts on this, and how are you seeing this now being implemented?
I think one important thing is to see that there is no longer lifelong job security, right?
Yeah.
We're in a world which is past that. And I think the other side is that we're doing a lot of lifelong learning. I think that's where we are going. So I agree, it's that this kind of nano skills, or you calling a bite-sized education. Education is changing. So my feeling is that university, you learn to learn. That's my feeling, is you learn the foundations, you learn the basics of what you're going to do, and you build from it. It's a foundational type of course, right? And that's why there is always this gap between the skills you need actually for the real world, for the world of employment, and what you learn at university. Because there will always be, I mean, of course, one way to look at this and to solve it is dialogue, conversation between employers, like the employers here, and conversation with the people actually providing the education, like universities and colleges and technical schools, etc. So I think what is important at Indoors is that by using people who have already acquired certain skills, like tech experts, people that have been working in companies for a few years, these are the people that can assess their peers. These are the people that can assess and see if the skills, for example, coding skills, all the skills are actually in line with what is needed in the job, in the marketplace every day.
Okay. So, Lakshmanan, do you see this at L&T with these employees, the need to reskill them, upskill them? Is there like a formal process that's put in place so that, I don't know, maybe every 6 months or every year, employees retrained?
Yes, technology is changing so rapidly, so fast, and so we have to constantly keep reskilling our employees. We have to constantly keep upskilling our employees. But one of the things that we do, and it has become very important, is to let that employee know a little more than the technical training, is to let him know the larger purpose, is to give him a vision, is to tell him, you know what, you can write this algorithm a little better so that you can hail the cab a little faster. Right? So what is the problem you're trying to solve? And when we start giving them that purpose, when we start giving them that larger vision, I think they quickly learn to learn. They quickly learn to unlearn.
Yeah, that's the important part, to unlearn and then relearn at the same time. But Gaurang, Lakshman brought up a really important point, is to give them the larger perspective. In a way, how do you at Indoors ensure that the products are giving the future perspective, which is a part of the larger perspective? Because today, fine, you've skilled them, but that should last them, I don't know, for the next 6 months, 1 year, and then be ready for that next 2 years, 3 years later. Because let's face it, in technology, things are changing overnight. That's a key part. How do you address that?
No, so at Indoors, we gave a full freedom to our developers, right? So our developers, we don't handhold them, we don't tell them every small nitty-gritty thing that they need to do. So as Lakshman said, we tell them the bigger picture, right? So we are like, okay, next week you need to build this feature which will, which will be able to onboard 10,000 new candidates, and you have 1 week to do that.
Right.
To figure it out.
Okay, all right. So
And those are the engineers that we love at Indoors.
another thing that you do is hackathons. I know that. And Sanam, I think Loom was a participant at one of these. So how does hackathons help you as an employer? Why do you need a hackathon?
The usual way that employers end up hiring today, usually ends up being a little more related to, okay, this is the coding test, and this is how you are going to be judged, and then you have the soft skills that you're going to be judged with, which in itself is a gap in India when it comes to engineers. Soft skills is something that aren't really deployed in their education entirely. But hackathons gives a chance to these employers to see the engineers solving a product problem. So in the terms of Bloom's hackathon, which we did, which are Bootstrap Paradox, we had 6 of our deep tech companies that took part in it, and each 6 gave a different problem statement. And the problem statements were there was logistics, there was gaming, there was education. And these engineers were involved into solving the problems of the product in a way where it could have eventually been a part of the product. So for employers, it was great for them to be able to see, which areas are the engineers good at, which areas are the engineers bad at, guiding them. We had mentors across the industry who had come, who were guiding these engineers. So it's a very different kind of hiring that, took place, which usually isn't really, there. Plus, I mean, it was a 24-hour hackathon. So engineers were extremely dedicated, and, it was the energy, the whole atmosphere was great to be a part of, to be, end up hiring from, I think. From the other point of view, I think the candidates also, the engineers also get a chance to, learn about companies in a way that, ideally they won't, because interviews are pretty structured today. Here you get to see the mentoring style, you get to see how they solve the problems, you get to see various areas of the founder, the CTO, which you would never ideally end up getting the chance. So I think it's it's something that many companies should deploy. It's something that many VCs should take a part in, because I think it connects you to the engineers today, which is very important to many communities today, which people don't end up doing because of the chaos and the speed entirely involved into hiring.
Ninad, when you're dealing with startups, now, of course, you're guiding them with the networking, the money, the guidance on the idea of the company. How much is there an emphasis on the HR part of how they are hiring more people or how they are managing their talent? Does that come up into conversations today?
It does. People are everything. Startup will fail because of people.
Yeah.
Ideas, technologies, are plenty of them. People make all the difference. Execution skills, talent. That's it. That's the core of any successful business, and more so in a startup, because in a startup you're on a mission mode all the time. You're like a hackathon. They're on a hackathon every day. No days less energy. So the people make all the difference, and the skills are very critical.
Eddie, when you're looking at India, and I'm coming to you from a global perspective, so just your thoughts, how is the HR space, and especially the HR being impacted by technology space in India, in the IT space, how's that different from what you're seeing around the globe?
Overall, technology is impacting HR, but probably I assume that it should go faster in India. I mean, I think you have the right infrastructure in terms of entrepreneurs like Gaurang, for example, and companies like Indoors, but I'm sure there is an ecosystem of startups out there and entrepreneurs out there that are going to put the bar quite high in terms of what you can do with IT. The problem, I would say, between HR and technology is that I agree with you about the soft skills part, and that's not something you easily acquire from technology. That's something you acquire by face-to-face meetings, by teamwork, etc., which is why I like also Indoors' approach of the human side, the fact that people are assessing people. We tend to a bit overestimate what AI can do really at this stage today. I think you still need the human element in there, especially for something like HR, which is so important, as you were saying, strategically important for the companies. I think one thing that I perceive, which may be wrong, is that I feel that in India you have a good job mobility. I think people are willing to go around the country, which is a vast country, to find the right job for them. And I think that's great for both, for the employer and for the employees.
Right.
And I also think that as an employee, you shouldn't focus too much on things like job loss, because job loss, like in the US, for example, is something that should be reflected in job gain. You lose a job, but another door opens, right? And if you are not the right person, then comes the skilling, the education, the lifelong learning.
On that note, it's time for a very short break here on Indoors Presents Skilling India the Right Way, partnered by ET Now. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Indoors Presents Skilling India the Right Way, partnered by ET Now, and I'm in conversation with a panel of experts on the need to see how India can continuously reskill and upskill itself. How has the response been to the part of Indoors where you're using like technology and like what Eddie said, where you're getting real people to assess the work, the assignment, so to say, done by a prospective employee? What's the kind of response, the impact that's happening there?
One thing is our experts are quite brutal. So on the scale of 1 to 10,
Yeah.
even getting an 8.5 is a miracle, I would say.
But then that's real, that's hardcore, real feedback that's being given there. So that's great.
And when we chart the scores on a bell curve, actually,
Yeah.
it actually follows almost in the middle, or I would say 6 is the median. I would
Okay.
say, 5.56.
All right.
So it's an interesting way of looking at things, right?
Lakshman, I'll come to you with the devil's advocate perspective, right? So we're talking technology, we're talking AI, and being used more and more in HR. Do you think AI and tech is going to get humans out of the HR space? Will HR managers lose their jobs to AI and tech?
No, I think, increasingly it's going to get, as they say, phygital, right? You're going to have
true.
You're going to have the physical need for people, and you're going to have digital people doing it. And just taking on with what Gaurang was saying in terms of, assessing lateral hires, right? You can't have people to assess somebody else on the latest leading edge technology, right? You don't have that many people to assess. That's where I think crowd-based assessing platforms like these would help. There is a very big market, right? Talking about people, I think today assessing behaviors through online instruments have become quite an in thing. But assessing lateral technical skills, right? Assessing technical capabilities of superior technical capabilities of people is something that is still nascent in our country. I think therefore there is a space for digital crowd-based assessing platforms. I think that's the good thing that's happening, and it will speed up the hiring process. It'll enable us.
Gaurang, how are you seeing the way ahead, India specific, changing in IT companies, the education that engineers need to be aware of? What's your sense? What will be different in 5 years?
See, I think as a software engineer, two very important things that you could do today are go to Coursera or Khan Academy and start learning all those courses, start consuming the content. Second thing is contributing to open source. So one of our developers is a third-year dropout, but he actually maintains the website of Node.js, and he's an amazing developer.
All right.
The best hire we have done.
Ms. Lakshmanan, now at your company, what do you think will change in the next few years?
I think the focus will continue to be on, what kind of passion, that he will bring in, what kind of ambition that the person demonstrates.
But how do you come to know that? What's that missing link there?
I think it's about how an individual is talking about, what's the clarity of thought, how clear.
Okay.
And honestly, if you go back and look at the so-called unemployable engineers, you will find that they are unable to articulate their thoughts. There's no clarity, there's lack of clarity. And the number of people who have clarity are very few even today, right?
Superb.
Very, very few. And if we can get those candidates, training them is relatively easy. But the ambition, the passion, the clarity, the ability to articulate, right? These are the skills that we are going to be looking for.
Sanam, your thoughts on this, the way ahead?
I'd keep going back to the point. For me, hiring has changed entirely, largely because I hire for early stage companies, and most of the Bloom's investments are early stage. And I believe that gone are the days when if you're looking out for a CFO or a CTO, you go out and just start searching. I think we have, changed the approach in a way where we talk to them about which areas of industries are you interested in. And the minute they come and tell me that I think logistics automation is something I want to be interested in, that is when I have one of Bloom's companies, Locus, that I put it put them in touch with. So the hiring is less to do with the role, and it's more to do with what the company is solving, the real world problem the company is solving. And I think that has, over the 3 years that I've been here, has changed the extent to where people are much more dedicated to solving the problems. They stay on for longer with these companies. They tend to add more value, not just in their area of aspects, but a lot more. I think even as an engineer, you end up becoming a business engineer, because you don't just code for the app or the website or the product. You end up coding to to solve business problems. And I think this is something that is, for Bloom really important in terms of, growing the next generation companies for India.
Ninad, how are you seeing things change in the next 5 years?
So I think, next 5 years, we will probably need to look at entrepreneurs and people who are ready to take moonshots. We are not wanting people who want to drive the car safely.
Right,
Then you don't become an entrepreneur. You have to reach out to the moon. Does this young girl or boy have moonshot ideas? And is he or she willing to go to the moon as opposed to driving safely on the road? And there are plenty of such people. They just require proper mentoring, guidance, and a little bit of money.
Eddie, you said the magic words to create your own company. How do you see the way ahead where maybe technology, skilling can come together to help existing employees move ahead and create their own
The
company?
great thing is, when I remember very well the internet years, right, the 90s, and a lot of the barriers have been removed. I mean, in the 90s, access to capital was very difficult, but at the same time, it still took a lot of capital. But today, if you have a few $1,000s really, and being creative and being innovative, you can create your own company. So the tech part is that today the great thing, and Gaurang was mentioning open source, is that you have so many tools that are either free or nearly free. And with all these tools, and some of them are, subscription based, etc., you can build so much. You can build so many of the tools that are needed for an everyday company building. So I think that's where tech is helping, bringing a lot of efficiency. And if you know how to choose it and what tools to select, it's not an issue anymore. To basically, you have all the accounting, all the tax, etc. This is today not an issue. So I think that's great. Technology is democratizing the ability to create companies. But I agree that the failure is very interesting, because stigma to failure is one of the biggest things that can stop entrepreneurs from trying, right? So when you remove the stigma from failure and it becomes a real learning experience, I mean, that's when you have a country or you have a nation where a lot of people go into entrepreneurship, and out of that you get great companies being built, which has been the case, of course, in India, and for sure in the future. But I agree that failure and the way you approach failure is very important. And the other thing is that what we have seen in the past is that a lot of startups that have been acquired by large companies fail. That's very interesting, right? Why? Because again, maybe the passion and the fact that you're in a bigger structure removes the kind of risk-taking you were mentioning. Risk-taking goes down. And I think risk-taking tomorrow is going to be ambivalent. You need risk-taking at the HR level. You need to take risk of the people you hire. And of course, you need risk-taking when that's what we do every day, right? Risk-taking when you invest in a company.
Thank you so much, panelists, for joining me here. You've been watching Indorse presents Skilling India the Right Way, partnered by ET Now. And the important thought that's come out is the need to continuously keep learning, keep reskilling, and keep upskilling yourself so that you are always gainfully employed. Thank you so much for watching.